All right, so I had a good friend of mine reach out because he was having knee pain after having an accident. So now knee pain is affecting him every time he's hiking, etc. So I wanted to put together a free class just going over everything knees. So the first thing that we have to understand is that the tibia and the knee is a hinge joint, but it also has access to rotation. So the first thing that we need to check is to see if we actually just have range of motion here and the ability to internally rotate, aka get this shin bone to turn in like this, and then externally rotate or get the shin bone to turn out like so. I'm going to start off with about 10 reps here, and I've found that I'm trying to really focus on keeping the femur from moving, so I don't want this knee to be doing the movement. I want to keep this locked in like this, and I just want this lower end doing the work. Now, if you haven't worked on knee rotation before, this is something that is definitely awkward and probably limited in range of motion. So using the hands to actually get the tibia to rotate is crucial. So I'm rotating out, and then I'm rotating in. And I also find that along with using my hands to keep my femur from moving, I can actually use my hands to get some of these tissues to rotate. And when I was first starting off with this was crucial and definitely very, very helpful. So let's say I'm at like 4 reps here. We're gonna do a total of 10. Now, foot placement is key. You don't necessarily need a slider. You can use a paper plate or just anything to take away the friction, but try to not let the foot do too much of this movement. More of the movement through the shin, less of the movement through the foot. I'm gonna do about 1 more of these before switching to the opposite side. So same concept. Now you may notice, and this is one of the things that we actually want to be looking for here, is that one side is not the same as the other. Now I believe this is pretty common, but my left side is lacking internal rotation. Right, this is very, very challenging for me. It has actually gotten much better, but the tissue on the outside of my tibia was extremely tight when I first started this. So like I said, using the hands to actually get these guys to rotate can be very, very helpful in the beginning stages. And if you notice that you're just a little bit tighter on one side, it's okay to spend an extra breath or two here, just working on improving this range. And I noticed that, like I said, even all the way up to the superficial, like my skin, all this stuff has just gotten locked up. So just getting this guy to move. Now obviously if you're feeling pain on this, shorten up the range of motion. Should not be painful. All right, now what I want to do after I get into this is we want to go into a pales and rails contraction. And basically what that means is we want to use a contraction to improve the range of motion. Now, I'm definitely limited on my internal rotation versus my external rotation, right? So my external rotation is probably a little better than internal. So I'm going to spend just a little bit of time here working. So I'm rotating the knee just out a little bit. And I'm just going to breathe, trying to passively open all of this stuff. I should feel a stretch on this side. After about 5 breaths, just working on improving range on the exhales. Inhaling through the nose and out through the mouth. Now from here, what I'm going to work on is contracting outward. So I take this thumb, I hook it around the ankle right here, and then I take the other 4 fingers and I trap my foot in place. And then I'm going to contract isometrically, which just means I'm not going to move towards this direction. So my foot should be sliding outward. I'll just be driving out, and I want to ramp up tension again without pain here. So I like to do about 5 to 10 seconds, anywhere from 50% to 100%, building tension. And then from there, I'm actually going to change where I put my hand. So I put my hand on the inside now, and on the outside, and then I'm just going to contract, again, isometrically, very low movement, just trying to drive my foot inward now. And I'll do the same thing here, 10 seconds. I feel a strong contraction on those inner hamstrings. Whoo. Then I just ramp up tension to about 50 to 70%. And then I like to just finish the stretch sequence off with just a couple breaths in this new range that I've created, keeping the midfoot trapped on the ground. And just searching for lines of tension before repeating on the opposite side. So again, left side used to be terrible at this internal rotation, and just using these pedals and rails has improved my range of motion a lot. Now, if you're one of those people that are walking, duck-footed, where your toes are actually rotated inward, then you'll probably notice that this external rotation is limited. Now, you can feel free also to do both, right? So you can do your pedals and rails on this side, and if I was working on external rotation, I would be contracting inward like this for the first contraction, and then I would be contracting outward like this for the next contraction, right? But for me, we're going to spend just a little bit more time again in this internal range of motion. So just breathing and just working on getting this shin to rotate internally as much as possible. Like I said, I can grab these tissues down here and just help. And I'm going to breathe here, just spending a little bit of time in this passive stretch. And I'm telling you this, I mean, it's not like I got a ton of range of motion, but this was nearly non-existent just a couple months ago, especially on this left side. Awesome. So I'm going to do one more breath before contracting isometrically. So I want to rotate out of the stretch in this direction. So just start tension at about 10%, 20, 30. Now I'm not getting any pain here, so I am going to go ahead and ramp this all the way up to 100 without resting in between. I want to try to switch. So now I'm actually driving the foot inward, resisting with my hands like so on both directions, the outside of my ankle now and the inside of my toe. And I'm just driving up tension as much as I can, trying to get that shin bone to rotate. And then, like I said, again, after about 10 seconds, building that contraction up, 70, 80, maybe even 100%. Okay, so awesome. One more breath here. So ideally, that was to improve the range of motion of the tibia. Now we're going to come down onto the floor and we're going to do some capsular cars. So you can do this seated, you can do this on a yoga block, but in essence, I'm going to come seated like this. I'm not going to lock my knees out, and what I want to do is actually see if I can get my kneecap to move. So up and down is the first goal. And now I know this might feel a little funky, kind of grosses me out at first, but this is completely natural. The kneecap should be able to shift up and down, as well as side to side. Again, I'm just soft in the knee. I'm not like driving my knee. I'm just slightly assisting my kneecap. And at first this was super awkward for me. Very, very strange feeling. but now it's getting a little better. So now I'm going to try to complete my circle. So I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to go inside, and I'm going to go up, and I'm going to go over to the left, and then I'm going to go down, and I'm going to do 2 of these rotations. Okay, not jamming anything, just getting a little movement in there. So down, out to the left now, up, over to the inside, down, left, up, inside. Woo! Getting the creepy stuff out of the way. So we'll just move over to the other side. I find doing these one at a time is ideal in the beginning. And then as you get better at this, you could do both at the same time just to save a little bit of time. However, if this is a new thing for you, it is super awkward. And oftentimes these guys are very, very locked up. So I noticed that my right side has quite a bit more range of motion in this. Especially in this up and down range, not so much on the side to side. Now I'm going to go into my circular rotations. So I'll go down to the side, up and then over, completing 2 of these rotations before reversing. So go down, out to the side, down, and over. About 2 of those really awkward ones. Okay, so now we're going to move into a traditional knee cars, which is just basically a knee rotation. So what I do with this one is I like to do this one seated on top of some blocks or a small chair. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull this guy up, and I'm going to use my hand to help with this rotation. I rotate my tibia outward, and then I'm going to extend my legs slightly as much as I can, really focusing on keeping that rotation. I will not be able to extend fully. Then I'm going to rotate inward, again trying to keep the femur out of the picture, so don't let the knee drive inward here. And then I'll rotate out, and then extend, and then rotate in. Again, trying to get the tibia to do most of the movement, but the ankles will come along for the ride. I'm going to do 3 out before repeating in the opposite direction. So now I'll internally rotate, shins coming inward, I'll extend, and then lower, and then back down. Now if you're doing these correctly, at this time, your shins, this muscle right here should be on fire, right? Maybe just a little bit of this hip flexor as well. That's bonus. We don't even charge for that. So rotating the shin and then extending. Woo! Fire! Okay, so 3 and 3 on the opposite side. So again, rotate out and then rotate in. Minimal movement. This knee's not coming inward. It's all happening from the shin. And then we just continue. And this should feel like you may have improved your range of motion right after those kneecap and after those rotational Pelton rails. You should feel a little bit better, right? Especially when you start getting into week 4 or week 5 of doing these moves. That's about 3. Now I'm going to go the opposite way. So we'll go rotate in, up, down, and around. Again, big part of me learning to feel this was using my hands to actually aid me in getting these guys to have some type of movement. All right, so now this one is specifically for those cyclists, right? What we want to do is we want to get our hips into extension. So I'll start off with this right side first. So I'm in the hip extension, and then what we want to do is get that same rotational factor going. So we're going to rotate out, and we're going to extend like this. Then we're going to rotate in. Hips are not shifting. This is all happening from the tibia. Hook, bring the heel in as much as I can. rotate it out again, and then now just lower. Like I said, I'm trying to keep most of the movement through the shins. And trying not to sway the hips too much. So now I'm going to go the opposite way. So we'll go in, extend, out, bend, in. And so if you're doing this right, you can hear the sound of my voice, and my shins are on fire. So again, trying to get as much of this rotation as you can with the hips in extension like this. So hips are extension, rotate it out, extend, rotate it in, bend. Rotate it out, rotate it in. So after about 3 reps there, we'll switch the direction, rotating them in, extending, out, bending. Now notice again on this one, I'm not going to full extension of the knee. I'm just going about right here, changing with rotation. In fact, extending the knee does not feel too good in this position, especially on my left side, so I'm working on it. Oh man, okay. So got the tibias nice and warmed up. Now we're gonna move on to some more global stretches. The first stretch that we're going to do is going to be a calf stretch. Now you can set this up in between a doorway, and what we want to do, we can get both feet at the same time here. We're going to bring the feet together and we're just going to walk back. Now the body's going to want to do this to cheat the stretch, but we want to squeeze and stay tall. So I'm actually creating some pressure with my upper body and pushing back. Now my heels should just be just off the floor, like you could slide a piece of paper under there. And this is where I'm going to hang out in the stretch portion. If you notice that one side is tighter to the other, you can kind of play with this gas pedal action of just shifting the weight onto one side and shifting the weight onto the opposite side, and even inching back as you get a little more comfortable with this stretch. So in this position, we're going to take some breaths. Just try to get the calves to relax. Again, searching for lines of tension as I do this. I'm going to do about 3 more breaths. You notice I've increased my range over that passive stretch. Now we're going to do 2 contractions, right? The first one, I'm going to act like I'm doing a calf raise, but this is an isometric contraction, so we're not going to lift. We're just going to press into the ground with our toes as hard as we can, ramping up tension over 10 seconds or so. From there, we're going to go the opposite way, which is going to be trying to lift my feet up. So we're just both ankles lifting, trying to keep the hips down, and hold this for about 10, 8, 7. Try to get that shape. 1. Again, I like to spend just a couple seconds feeling this stretch out after I do those pails and rails contractions. So that's working on the calves. Now we're going to get the quads into the picture. So what we want to do here, we really need to understand pelvic tilt. So when I set up for this, I want to set up with my hips tilted back And then I want to work on rolling my hips under like this. Now for a lot of people this is extremely challenging. So one of my favorite ways to modify this is to use a surface. So this could be a bench, this could be a chair, a couch, whatever works for you. And then what you got to do is work on understanding the tilt first. So hips tilt back, we call this an anterior tilt because the water would be sloshing out of the front of the bowl. And then if we take the hips and we rotate them back like this is the tilt that we're working on, where the tilt would actually be falling out of the back of our bowl. We call this a posterior pelvic tilt. And then from here, what I'll do is I lock this hip tilt in and I stay rounded in my upper body. Then from here, I'm going to squeeze and work on keeping this tilt, right? And then the more that you can lift yourself up without losing the tilt, the stronger the stretch. So I just roll myself up into extension. I like to keep a little bit of pressure down on this box. Now most people are going to be here like this, and they're going to feel a strong stretch across the front side of the quad and hip flexors, and that's what we're looking for. So again, I'm going to spend about 10 breaths here. Just again shifting, searching for lines of tension, trying to maintain that tilt. And you may even notice that as that time progresses, you get access to a little bit more range of motion. That's fine. Just work your way up just a little bit higher. So I'm going to spend about 3 more breaths here. So there's 2 contractions that we're going to work on. The first one is going to be kicking the foot and the knee through the box as hard as we can. So I also like to almost like I'm dragging this box forward. All right, so again, I start with slow, small amounts of tension, driving that foot into the ground, and just ramping up tension. Trying to really fight, trying to get that squeeze and that shake. In the last 3, 2, 1. Then from here, without moving, I'm going to try to just lift that heel towards my bottom without losing that tuck. So none of this. Keep the tuck and then lift. And then you're just going to lift. Start slow so you don't cramp right away. And then just build up tension. Now, if you're cramping, it's okay. You're not going to die, and it will get better. So on the left side, I used to cramp absolutely every single time. It doesn't happen as much anymore. So something to look forward to. Now we've taken care of the left leg back. We're going to go ahead and do right leg forward now. So same concept. Now again, with this one, it's also important that we don't allow our hip to shift. So the hip will like to find an easier way to do this stretch and search for areas that are not as tight. We want to make sure you're keeping the hips lined up, and then we understand that in order to really target the tissue we're targeting, we need to focus on this posterior pelvic tilt. So again, tilt everything back, tuck everything under on the exhale, maintain that tuck. Right? In this folded position, you're going to take big breaths. So on these exhales, I'm just trying to tuck my pelvis under and drive my hips forward. I can do that with my forearms by dragging back just a little bit. I can also do that a little bit with this foot by dragging myself forward, kind of slide this foot back just a little bit. And so you might notice that one side is a little bit tighter than the other. For me, my left side is definitely a little bit tighter, so I get a little bit more access on this side. And you could just adjust accordingly. If you need to be down here, that's all good. If you can be up here, that's even better. Then from here, we're just working on breathing. Shift the hips left, shift the hips right. Searching for lines of tension. You can even do little little circles here. Ooh, that's spicy. All right, and then from here, we're gonna go big inhale. We're gonna do our first isometric contraction, which is gonna be driving that back foot, kicking this front foot forward, and holding for 10. Really trying to ramp up tension. Last 5 seconds. Really drive through. 3, 2, 1. Without changing shapes, lift that back leg up. So just really lifting, really lifting, really lifting. Ah, that's what I get for saying I don't cramp anymore. Pretty major cramp in that back. Right side. Woo! Now with this one, if that felt too easy, you could definitely take some type of block, or a yoga block or whatever, but you should have very little range of motion there. I just demonstrated it a little lighter because I know, especially if you're having knee pain, you're probably going to be tight in that position. Okay, so we're going to finish up with just some very easy forward folds. Woo, I can feel all the backside of the knees super activated. And on these forward folds, we're just going to take a big inhale. And we're just going to work on folding over. Now, if you don't have access to touching your toes like this, you could take some type of towel, shirt, hoodie. I got a hoodie right here. And I want to place the towel on the top side of my foot, like from here up, so that I have access to being able to dorsiflex. So just move my toes forward and backwards, right? So just both of those actions really change the sensation up. And now we're cooling down, guys. So we're just taking big inhales. And just working on sliding the heels forward. Notice I'm soft in my knees, but working on getting a little bit more extension. Like I said, pedaling the feet really changes the sensation here. So my left side feels tight when I bring my toe in like this and then lengthen. So that's where I would hang out for just a little bit. I can do the same thing on this side, turn the toe in, and I hold from the pinky. Ooh. So just by rotating that foot inward and then outward, really changing the sensation of the stretch. Now, you can do this standing as well, but I do like this freedom where the foot is actually off the floor so I can move and change shapes. And this block is making a huge difference for me. You could do this on a bench or something a little bit higher. If your back starts to light up, well then that is the end of your day, right? But I hope that was extremely helpful. I would program this or do this at least once a week for 4 to 6 weeks to see if you're actually making changes and improvements, and hopefully that helps. Leave a comment with any questions, comments, or concerns. We'd love to hear some success stories from this. Till next time.